Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to today's Monday, October the 17th workshop on updating of social and emotional learning. Este taller de actualización del aprendizaje socioemocional. Glad to have you all here, and we're looking forward to a very valuable education.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate this, the time that we can be in front of the board to talk about social and emotional learning. It is a passion of mine and something that I really feel strongly about. And I'm just really excited about what you're going to experience today. And I have an amazing cast of presenters with me today. So over here we have Jody Smith at Sunny Slope, Amy Speets, who's at Orchard, and Jennifer Devereaux, almost said Jennifer, it was Jennifer Devereaux and Heidi Monroe from Westside High School. So you'll be hearing from all of them today during our presentation. But I'm going to kick us off with a little bit of the why behind social emotional learning. And we, like always, during our board workshops when learning and teaching is here, we're going to take you through our inclusive introductions, give you some engaging activities, and then we'll end with an optimistic closure. So those are the three signature SEL strategies from CASEL. And we've asked all of our administrators to model those in their meetings with staff and in their meetings with pretty much anyone that they come in contact with. And it's an easy way to bookend a class time or a class period as well. So we'll start with that. Maybe. What did I do? I want to apologize for that. Oh. Okay, this is good. Here we are. So this is our inclusive opener for today with an elbow partner here. Please think back to one of your favorite teachers during your K-12 experience. Share with your partner what some of the characteristics of that teacher were and why you were drawn to them. So just a little turn and talk here. Give you a few minutes.
She's really going for it.
Okay, we'll give about another 30 seconds or so. Wrap up your conversation, about 30 seconds. Thank you. Excellent. Oh, I'll take that opportunity. There was a natural lull in the room, so we'll go ahead and jump in on that. What were some of the characteristics that you described? You don't have to tell me who you talked about or who your teacher was, but what were some of the characteristics, if you don't mind? Anybody here? Funny, excellent. Okay. Passion for their subject, yes.
People landed on our first choice of people who were teaching and overcoming adversity.
Okay, overcoming adversity. So they had a story to tell. Oh, okay. Okay, now I understand. I understand that. I may have fallen into that boat. Yeah, okay. Great, great. Well, as I was creating this, the inclusive opener, I was thinking about some of the teachers that impacted me as well when I was in high school. And in high school, I feel like it was a time when these amazing educators were able to grab my attention at a time when I was not ready to just give my attention to anyone. And maybe in some ways I was maybe sabotaging my own educational experience in high school with social things or whatever. But I really thought to Mr. Merrill, and many of you know Doug Merrill. He was a new teacher when I was in high school. There were a few things that I thought about with Mr. Merrill's, like he wanted to know about me personally. He always had sage advice to give me. He always pushed me with high expectations. He always gave me gentle support, but consistently applied, right? And I just think of Mr. Merrill as I think of SEL, social emotional learning. How do you build relationships? How do you create culture and climate in your classroom that extends into the building and beyond? And the great thing is, I mean, I've already had my 30-year reunion, so it was a while back when I was in his class. He didn't have a curriculum necessarily. He didn't have a specific time during the day, but it was SEL, and it was honest and it was true. And to this day, if I see that man, and I used to see him a lot, we worked in the same building, he got a hug. And that was just me saying thank you for caring about me, and his compassionate leadership and teaching. So I'm glad, and I hope you all had experiences like that you were able to think of. And I think of SEL and where we are in the district, and yeah, it isn't always a curriculum, and it isn't always a time during the day. It's just who we are as people and how we interact with our students. So today, our learning outcomes are to gain a deeper understanding of the importance of SEL, experience a few examples of the way our educators are implementing SEL, and then obtain perspective on the variety of ways that SEL can be leveraged in the classroom and in the building to impact the culture and climate. Lots of words, and I take this definition. This is the SEL definition that CASEL gives us, and CASEL is our national go-to when it comes to social emotional learning and social emotional standards for the nation. Social and emotional learning is an integral part of the education and human development. SEL is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply this knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotion, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. They're also known for their lengthy compound sentences, as you can see here. But that first paragraph, that's the foundation we want our students to have. And that is a foundation that can set a student up for learning, which is more about what the second paragraph has. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school-family community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction, and ongoing evaluation. I wouldn't read this if it wasn't important. You can read it, I know that, but I just felt it's so powerful when we talk about the impact of social and emotional learning. SEL can help various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe, healthy, and just communities. Those words are super important. Those words transcend a definition from CASEL into our strategic plan. And I thank you all for that, because that is a great piece of work that we can, what am I doing? Okay, all right, click harder. So this is the why. This is why we're spending time on SEL. It leads to improved academic outcomes. The benefits are long-term. We're talking social emotional learning. We're talking not just during school day, after school, before school, weekends, after graduation, and on and on. SEL is a wise financial investment. When we think about that, it's important to think about that in time and how we want our educators to use that, because it does come down to finances, and it will help improve life outcomes for our students. We want them to thrive in school and outside of school. Yes. Okay. Huge study in 2011 with 270,000 students. It was a meta-analysis. The middle section here are the links to the student gains. What do students gain from social emotional learning in their schools, implemented with fidelity across the board? We know and hope they gain social emotional skills, right? We want that. We want them to be emotionally intelligent individuals, improved attitudes about self, others, and school, positive classroom behavior, and if we can get some academic gains out of it, we'll take it. And a lot of those academic gains come from that conversation. When we implement SEL well, students feel more adjusted, they feel more regulated, they feel more ready to learn than without. So if this was my classroom, all of you just walk into my class and I'm like, all right, get your books out, turn to page 42, without an inclusive opener or without even saying hi or without some sort of salutation. We have to set the stage for learning. Otherwise, the learning is not as deeply impactful. What we reduce behavioral problems and emotional distress along the way. Boom. Okay, you've seen these slides before, right? We're talking about our priorities here. So thriving environment. How does SEL relate to our strategic plan? Welcoming spaces where all individuals can flourish, are seen and valued, feel safe, and know they belong. Ultimately, social emotional learning is linked to classroom culture. Social emotional learning is linked to building culture and climate. How do students feel when they come into our classrooms? How do students feel when they come into the building? What are the relationships between the adults in these buildings? How does everyone interact and coexist? That's what we're creating with our thriving environments. And number 2 in the big 6, students know they belong, seen, valued, and heard, and have healthy relationships with staff and peers. And I want to read something to you from at Stanford University. There is a belonging project that they have created, which I just love. That just sounds great. What are we doing at Stanford? We're helping folks belong. And they've based that belonging project on a body of research. And they have found that the importance of a sense of belonging has been demonstrated through empirical work on human resilience and factors that protect emotional health, personal well-being, and in the context of adversity and trauma. Individuals develop a sense of belonging when they feel connected to other people, especially those who share their distinct life experiences. Experiences, interests, and or goals. School activities that foster a sense of belonging promote mental and physical health and help individuals to flourish in all aspects of their lives. I want to be part of the belonging project. That sounds great. And then they said, conversely, now here's the flip side. Unfortunately, conversely, clear evidence has shown that individuals in distress who feel that they are not connected or they are disconnected and not part of a larger community are especially vulnerable to poor outcomes, including impulsive or self-harmful behavior. And they coined that term thwarted belongingness. We do not want thwarted belongingness. For all of these reasons, we have taken SEL very seriously in the Wenatchee School District before the pandemic, specifically during the pandemic, and most importantly, after the pandemic. And so I'm really proud of where our district is currently. And I'm very proud of where our district, what our entry point was with social emotional learning. And these 4 individuals have been with us for that entire journey and have been helping to lead that process. So that's why I'm very excited that they're here with me today to talk about it. And with that, I would move over to Miss Jody Smith from Sunny Slope, and she's going to share a little bit about what SEL looks like in elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so thank you for being here this afternoon, and it's an honor to be presenting again about social emotional learning. I've done it before. Some of you were on the board back when we did that, but we're so fortunate to be a part of a district and a board that recognizes social emotional learning. And so being a part of this process for the last 7 years that I've been in the district has been such it's been great work. And so we have taken this robust process of identifying what a curriculum would look like and all of those things that I was a part of with you and with Mike and with Corey as well. But looking at that, a robust process, and then saying, oh, this is the one we want. This is the one that we're going to pilot in classrooms. And then taking a step further and saying it met all of the needs of our state SEL standards. We adopted those into our district, which was amazing. And then now we're rolling that out into elementary schools. We continue to do that with fidelity. We're all at different places in the elementary school, but it's exciting to continue to see what that looks like after a kind of post-pandemic. Where do we currently live? These are two of our big bright spots in elementary. We have something called Meetup and Buddy Up, and both of those are big parts in harmony in the curriculum that we're following. But every building is utilizing that designated SEL time. So as a board and as a district, we decided that this 30 minutes is like SEL time. And I can tell you that every building is utilizing that 30 minutes. So that is a big bright spot. Our Meetup, our class meetings are happening. Harmony gives us, the curriculum gives us steps for what that looks like, and it's happening in schools. You're seeing that's where that kind of touch base point happens with finding what the class is about in that community building piece. And then the next part of the curriculum is a buddy up process, and those are classroom partners. You can use those all day long. I use them in my classroom a lot, and you can see a first grade buddy up happening in the corner over there. And then we have a built community within the classrooms. I put an email out to coaches, and I said, does anybody have anything to say about what SEL has done in their classrooms? And I am happy to report that we have stories that are coming with that, but they were also wanting me to make sure that I talked about how they're able to problem solve using these classroom commitments. A classroom commitment is basically our 4 personal standards that the district has: show respect, solve problems, make good decisions, and be kind. We added that one a couple years ago. And those would be our problem solving classroom commitments. And then the other bright spot, the last one, is our common vocabulary throughout the classroom and building. So a student who is at Lincoln and transfers to Washington has the same common language. And that instantly helps with that belonging piece and that safe piece for students when they're entering a brand new school. And then this year, other schools have been doing solutions rooms for quite some time, but the rest of the elementary schools have kind of gotten on board with that. The solutions rooms are things like at Sunny Slope, it's called the Wolf's Den. And those are rooms that provide opportunities for students who are coming in at different levels of emotions and find a way to get back to being regulated so that they have opportunity to get back into the classroom and make good decisions, both socially and academically. Okay, so as promised, here are our teachers' stories. So the cumulative effect of using diversity and inclusion lessons over several years is definitely sinking in. We have a student whose literacy levels are late kindergarten, and he recently called over to another student table group, asking how to spell "and." No one smirked or made any kind of comment, and one child just spelled it out for him slowly and kindly. And this is what the teacher said: "I consider this a huge win in students' empathy, kindness, and acceptance of others." And when I got that, I was like, oh, this is so much better than something I could have made up, because this is happening in our schools. Like, this was a teacher that took the extra time to write this note, so that we can see that SEL is happening there. My students have learned valuable skills, and it has provided the opportunity to get to know each other better. We share and get to hear stories that otherwise would have been bottled up had we not designated a time for SEL. And the last one here, I'll let you read. And if you're not familiar with our friend Z is our cute little green stuffed animal that is a part of our Harmony curriculum, and kinder and first grade classrooms use it. And it is kind of a safe little stuffed animal, and you get to use it for lots of different activities. But Z is one of those tools that we use for sharing and for safety. And so kinders are loving that. So I kind of went over my introduction. Corey did a great job, but my name is Jody Smith, and I used to teach at Washington. I've been there for the last 6 years, and then this year moved to Sunny Slope as the new instructional coach over there. So I'm getting an opportunity to now see SEL happening in a different way, not just in my own classroom, but getting to see how other teachers implement it in their classroom with their own community. So that's been great. And then Corey had passed out to you note cards. And in those note cards, I am hoping you will join me in a brief activity. It is called I Am Curious. And I've given you some things to think about elementary, but in this activity, you're going to write down something that you're curious about with SEL in the elementary schools. It'll give you about a minute. And then if you feel so brave to share that thought out after that minute, that would be great. So as you wrap that up, you are participating in an SEL focus. This is something that we would do, and this helps us with two of those CASEL competencies. One of them is self-awareness, and then the other one is that social awareness. So having an opportunity to share out gives you a chance to flex that bravery muscle. And so I would just ask that if anybody feels like they could share one thing they're curious about, and then the rest of the time, maybe I'll answer that question. Maybe I'll answer that curiosity throughout this presentation. And then at the end, you also have that to remember when we have Q&A at the end, because you're going to go through middle and high school. So it'll give you that opportunity to keep that at the forefront of your mind during Q&A. So does anybody want to share out their wonderings or the curiosity about SEL in the elementary schools? It's okay if you don't want to.
I'll go. It's not actually a single thing. I'm going to go back to that lovely standard phrase, thwarted belonging. So students just come into the elementary school for a whole variety of reasons from outside school not prepared by experience or example of how to engage others.
Mm.
And then you have, then if you're in that class, yes, you've got the program, yes, you've got the exercises. How long might it take? It could be variable. And how do you notice where that situation is, particularly if a child is skillful at disguising that?
Which they usually are. They've learned those tools before they get to elementary school usually. Thank you. Anybody else have a curiosity?
For me, it's, we at the elementary level, we as parents, children bring home their multiplication or reading logs. So we're supporting them and helping them at home with those academic pieces, right? So how can parents support the work that students are learning, teachers are teaching in the home environment outside of the basics, respect, but how can we carry that? Because emotions don't stop when they get home. Actually, they get worse.
Right, exactly. They save it for you. Yeah, exactly. That's good. Thank you.
I'm going to start off by saying I support the work and the activities that you're doing and the purpose behind it. But in the community, we have received some resistance to spending resources on SEL. So I'm curious if any resistance has appeared to you from either staff, parents, or others. What does that look like, if so?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know we'll have time for that. It's kind of a longer answer. But I will address all of those today. And hopefully the rest, if I don't, hang on to those for the end for question and answer. And so the challenges, and this is going to go to some of the things we just talked about, challenges, teachers are coming up and saying, well, we're having some challenges here. And so time to explore and teach the lessons. So when you look at the Harmony website, it's exhaustive. It's tons and tons and tons of materials. It's fairly well laid out. And the new version is one of the areas of focus. We have a new version 3 rolls out in full November 1st. And so we're kind of in that weird, like, do we go to the old version? Do we go to the new version? And then, so that's going to be an area of focus this year, is how we roll out that new version of Harmony and updating a slide deck. So our counselors worked really hard at creating a slide deck that matched up perfectly with the Harmony lessons K5. And so if a teacher was feeling overwhelmed, which is a common thing we get, is how do I do this in this short amount of time? And 30 minutes might feel like a long time, but it feels really short when you're getting into the meat and potatoes of these lessons. And so having time or the focus to update those slide decks that they worked on, it takes you exactly through it. I'm going to show that to you now. The other thing is the inconsistencies between elementary schools. The elementary schools are all doing something a little bit different, and that can be challenging from a district perspective. However, what we want is was for schools to be able to meet their demographic and become their own community. So sometimes that might look a little bit different. And so that is under the challenging section. And so I also put that under area of focus for a consistent implementation of Harmony, since that is our adopted curriculum. So your lesson, kind of the lesson of the day for teachers. It looks like this. There's 3 parts. And in those 3 parts of the daily lesson, you have 30 minutes. And we have meetup, which is a class meeting. It takes about 10 minutes. We have buddy up, and it's 1 to 3 minutes, depending on the question or how you want to set it up in your classroom. And then we have the Harmony lesson, and the Harmony lessons can take about 15 minutes. If you did the whole thing, it could take 60. And so what the counselors did in these slides is they broke them up into these bite-sized chunks. And so they're about 15 minutes each day if you follow them through with fidelity. And that's where we get our 30 minutes of instruction. And so as long as teachers, if they need that support, that is where I would direct them to that slide deck, because it's pretty incredible. So this is the first page of the slide deck, each unit. So each unit or each lesson, we have a greeting. That's what we do first thing in our class, in our morning meeting, SEL time. We do a greeting, we gather in a circle, and we say hello to each other. Instantly, if you say people's name, they have an instant sense of belonging. The research has showed us through SEL is the second you say somebody's name, they feel like you care about them. And so that is a high priority for us, is to say everybody's name, have your friends say your name and say their name. And that automatically gives them that sense of belonging that we've been talking about. Here are our class connections. Those are those 4 expectations that we've been talking about. The community check-in, those are when we would go and to talk about our 1 to 2 students that share, and then our class goals. The highs and lows, that's problem solving. So that's it. We're celebrating the things we're doing well related to this. And then we're talking about some challenges. Those are our lows. And then we're not saying like, oh, Heidi hit me at recess. You're just saying a friend of mine wasn't kind to me at recess because she hit me. And so we're saying, wow, how did you handle that? Did it work? And then let's problem solve how we would handle it next time. And so that gives us a constant in touch with our class and constant connect point. I had class meetings probably 2 or 3 times a day because I had 4th grade students who had a lot of emotions. And these kids would come back from recess or unstructured times with lots and lots of issues. And so instead of like doing one at a time or like trying to figure out how to help solve their problems, I let them help each other solve the problems. I'm not at recess. And so it was really important and impactful to them to be able to problem solve that. And then the next morning, we would talk about how are we going to attack today? We're going to attack today at recess with this in mind. And then I would check back in. How did it go today, you guys? Did we do it? And so that is a really important part of our community. And then the question of the day, it's not all of those, but as you will see, there's our 5 questions. Those are 5 days. So on Monday, we would say, what might make you feel like giving up and what motivates you to keep trying? And you're with your buddy. So those buddies get rotated depending on the class between 1 and 2 weeks at a time. So you're with somebody new all the time, but it's teacher directed, right? So you want those kids who would never partner up together, because that is how you build a stronger community. And then you have your close your meeting with a predictable routine. A lot of people, I had a class motto. So we ended with a class motto. In this class, I would say, in this class, and the class would all say, we are kind. And they chose it, not me. I did like it, but they say, we are kind. And then they would go back to their seats and we would start the next thing in our day. And then the lesson is the last thing that you would do. So sometimes that can't be in those 30 minutes because maybe your problem solving time was longer. So you would want to always keep that in mind and say, okay, well, do I have 15 minutes somewhere else in my day that could put this in? Because it's that important. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe I'm close to my end. So our learning target, you guys get to be students today, 3rd graders. And our learning target is I can use clues to identify other people's feelings and why they may feel that way. So it's going to be quick because I don't want to spend all this time, but can you hear most everybody? Inside your folder, you will have some emotion cards. And the first thing, so yesterday, here's what I would say. You're going to just pretend to be students. And I know it feels a little bit silly, but this will give you a really good indicator of what this looks like. So yesterday, students, we talked about perspective and how we can have different points of view. We saw things differently in the same picture. So I would hold up the perspective picture that we talked about yesterday. And some of us saw an older man and some of us saw a younger woman. We talked about how that can happen in situations too. We see what is happening one way and others might see it another way. The way we see a situation is called our perspective or our point of view. We all view situations and object from our perspective. What's important is that we can also see things from other people's perspectives, and it can help us understand how people are thinking and feeling. So today in your activity, some of you have a paper clip, and it has a scenario on there. Kind of fast forwarding it a little bit, you have your emotions chart, and this kind of tells you what the emotion is, what it looks like, sounds like, and what it could feel like. And then on your paper clip, don't show it to your neighbor, but it has scenarios on there. I want you to look at your scenario and you're going to act it out without talking, but you're going to act it out using your facial expressions. Okay. And your partner is going to guess how you're feeling. Okay. So and you don't have to participate if it makes you feel really uncomfortable, I will partner with you. So you could just let me know when we get to that time. So you're going to tell your partner what number your scenario is, but don't tell them what it is. Tell them what number so they know which one to write it under. And they're going to write the emotion they think you're showing. And then it says empathy action. Empathy action is their response to you. So how would I act if somebody was angry? I'm not going to probably punch them, right? I might, but this is about your response. So if you choose to punch them, then what we would do is, right, we would come back around and we would say, hey, is that a good way to solve this problem? Is it showing respect, making good decisions, solving problems, and being kind? We were always going back to those same classroom commitments. So you guys ready for this? It'll be fast. 20 seconds per partner. You're going to show the emotion, and then you're going to write down what you think it is. Okay? Can we do it? Okay, 20 seconds, ready? First partner, go.
Oh, no. She's changing. She's going to do a lot of she's and now she's happy. Yeah, yeah.
So if you have a moment to share yours, actually read your scenario card to your partner and see if they got it right and what their response was. I had to fast forward. It's about another 10 seconds. All right, if I can draw your attention back here. So this is a typical third grade lesson. And we did skip a little bit because I didn't set it up all the way just for time purposes, but this is an opportunity then to share out the scenario and then what could our responses be. And so again, empathy is one of our biggest core values in our classroom because you want to know what it feels like to walk in other people's shoes and then respond that way. And so that would be a way we would kind of wrap it back around. And so then you would end your day with your learning target again, and then check to see how people are feeling about their understanding of this. So I can use clues to identify other people's feelings and then why they may feel that way. And so I would maybe end with like, I feel pretty good about that. I need a little bit more practice, or I don't know how to identify other people's feelings. And that would be my exit ticket. That would be like, oh, I need to circle back around. If everybody's here, I have a lot of work to do. Right. And so every day I may start with a different pace. I may start with I don't feel good about this. And And so why do you guys think I might be feeling this way? And just start looping those things into your day. Most people at the end of this lesson are like this. They're like, oh yeah, I know how people feel, especially like my mom and dad when they're yelling. Or when my mom and dad are hugging me and loving on me. Most kids understand that. And so this lesson is one of those fun ones where you get to really engage with the people around you and then hear how they would problem solve it. So the last thing is that sense of belonging piece. And I had a student a few years ago, and he came from out of state. He came in the middle of our year, and we had the hardest time getting his information. And his information was just not readily available. We tried and we tried and we tried and we tried. He started school, and we noticed got him on, those assessments we like to do for kids right when they come in. And so we saw that he was significantly below grade level. And he also had some speech things. He was pretty withdrawn. And we just had the opportunity, like my class was totally on board, and they were like, oh, we have a new student, is amazing. And can't wait to get him plugged in. And so he started like slowly coming like a little bit earlier. And so he wasn't 10, 20 minutes late. Now he's coming and it's time. So he then he came to me and he said, I like football. And I was like, that's amazing. I love football. What do you like about football? I like to hit people. I was like, cool. I knew I had another kid in my class who played Wenatchee youth football. I sat those kids right next to each other. I gave them opportunity throughout the day to talk, and they talked football, and they started playing at recess, and they started including others. And the next thing I know, I have a cute little mini football team in my class. But what I noticed more than anything is this kid went from completely withdrawn to successful. I got his file. His file was about this thick, and he had incident after incident of fight after fight, physical aggression, things that you would look and you would be like a little bit nervous to have that kid in your class because you're not sure how he's going to respond. I didn't see any of that, nothing. And he said to me every day, Mrs. Smith, I love being in your class. I love being here. Everybody likes me. He didn't have a single fight all year. He went from first grade to beginning of fourth grade at the end of the year. And unfortunately moved away, went back to the state he came from. But I'll never forget the impact it had, not only on him, but on my class and on me as a person. I realized the work we're doing here, you guys, is really, really impactful. And even if it impacted just one kid, that's enough. And he knows that he's loved in Wenatchee School District because of the way his classmates treated him and the way his school treated him. So thanks for the time, and thank you for the effort you're putting into SEL in our district.
I'm moving my way around the room. I'm happy you guys quickly just fill this out. When you are done filling out, you can simply turn it over or push it in front of you, and I will select it at some point during the presentation.
You. All right. My name is Amy Speets, and I am here talking about middle school SEL from Orchard Middle School. Thank you guys for having me today. As I am talking, just continue to kind of fill those out. I will know you are finished when your paper is slid to the front of your table. This activity is called our zone checks. At Orchard Middle School, we do this at the start of every single class period. Students do this electronically on their iPad. When we look back at Castle, Corey referred to that quite a bit. That's where we look to get our SEL standards from and what we base all of our curriculum on, and should lead back to those standards. The two standards that we look at when we're doing these zone check is self-regulation and self-management. So those are the two that we are focusing on helping build and increase knowledge of in our middle school students, and honestly in staff as well, because this is a good practice for adults to have throughout the day also. So they come into the classes, a very quick process. It takes maybe 30 seconds on the board in my room. for the instructions for the day. It simply says, do your zone check and then list their entry task for the day. When they complete this, a couple of things happen. If they check in as red, they are frustrated, they are mad, they do not want to be in class today, something has happened in their world. The teacher of that class will automatically get an email that says, Jennifer Devereaux has checked in as red today. So at some point during that class, the teacher expectation is that they would go over to Jennifer, not in a public setting, they would take her to the side, find a time when they're independently working and say, hey, I saw that you're checked in as red. I just want to check in to see if there's anything I can do for you today to help move you into a different zone. Teachers get extensive training on this at the start of the year and throughout the year. So we know how to approach kids, some strategies they can use. The other people that get training on this is our middle school students as well, because they don't have to tell us what's going on in their world, but we want to teach them, you know, you can say, no, I'm okay. You can't say, no, I don't want to talk to you, you're stupid. But you can say, no, there is something going on, but I don't want to talk about it today. And then the teacher just has some awareness that they are struggling. The other thing that happens is students have the opportunity to write some comments in there. Those comments go to several people in the school, not everybody, because it'd be pretty overwhelming for every teacher to get those comments. But they go to our principal, our assistant principal, myself, some of the instructional coaches and the counselors. And then we look through those multiple times a day and check in on students who need a check-in throughout the day, or if they wrote a comment, you know, my cat died last night, we make sure that somebody touches base with them throughout the day to see if there's any additional support that we can offer them. The other strategies that we use with this, if we notice a student has checked in as red, our counselor has made some of these little flip through booklets, and I'll just set it if you guys want to look at it as it goes around, but it's basically a little booklet of strategies that students can use to help get themselves from our red zone or a blue zone or a yellow zone to our green zone, which is considered ready to learn today. And they're just quick, they can be done at the desk. And that way they start to build not only self-awareness of this is what's happening in my world today, but it's happening and I'm frustrated and I'm mad or I'm upset or I'm sad, but I'm also at school for the next 7.5 hours and my job here at school is to learn. So how do I get myself ready to learn today? Moving to that self-management of, okay, it is a bad day, but I still have to move forward in my educational process. So let's teach some of those skills. Okay, so that's how we start all of our day. It's been a phenomenal tool for us and I personally love it. I think it's great. All right. The adopted curriculum that we use at the middle school is our Character Strong. Each 3 of the middle schools, I think, is on a different number of years using it because Pioneer actually used it before it was a district adopted curriculum. So today we're going to start in your head. You're going to have about 15 seconds to think of 6 words or less that would describe your perfect day. Focus in, think of 6 words or less. I am not as nice as Jody, so I'm just going to call on you to share what your 6 words would be. We have about 7 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. And I hope none of you are counting because I use the technique I do with my children where I just make up time. They are going to be terrible at time management someday. I will share first because I will never ask my students to do something that I am not willing to do myself in 6 words or less. Poolside with my kids and husband. That is my perfect day. Catherine, you know I'm going to you. Go ahead.
Pretty darn close to yours. My husband, a beach, the sun, an island, and a cocktail.
We could go on vacation together. I like that. That's good. Martin, what about you? Would you like to share with us?
The mountain pass I'm heading to, and it's sunny and bright and great. And I've got lots of energy.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, again, like Jody, I'm not quite as nice. So I'm going to ask you guys to engage in some activities today in which you are going to be standing up and moving around a little bit. Our activity today is called regrouping. We're going to take a few minutes to connect with each other in this room. We're going to try to get to know some interesting things about each other that maybe you would not otherwise know. So in a second, I'm going to give you a slide. It is going to give you a number and a body part. It's not as weird as it sounds, I promise. Okay, if it says 2 noses, you need to have 2 noses in a group. So me and Heidi could be 2 noses. Jennifer can't join us because then it's 3 noses. So you need a group of 2. Okay, if it says 4 elbows, group of 2. Okay, ready? Here we go. Oh, I explained that part. 5 feet. Go. Stand up. We need 5 feet in a group. You have, find a group of 5 and put a foot in the middle. You have about 7 seconds to get there. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 3/4, 1 1/2. They did it. Great job. All right, you are going to answer this question. If I could snuggle with one type of animal, what would it be and why? Go ahead and share with your group. If you could snuggle with one type of animal every day, what would it be and why? All right, we're coming to the end of our time. If you have not shared, share quickly, please. All right, go ahead and freeze. Body toward me, voice at 0, please. And just like before, I am more than happy to share my answer first. My answer would be a stuffed animal because I am vastly do not like animal hair. So stuffed animal is what I would choose to snuggle with every day. 3 knees. 3 knees. You are finding 3 other people with knees. Oh. If we have extra knees, that's okay. There you go. One knee. Corey can do 1 knee and Jody can do 1 knee, and now you have 3 knees. All right, here we go. Who is your favorite fictional character and what are some traits about them that you admire? Let's get harder. All right, you have about 5 seconds. Finish up your conversations. 4, 3, 2, 1. And for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and find our seat. Thank you for participating today.
It's okay, you can get back. We'll be anxious on your answer.
At the end of each lesson, we're going to do a quick reflection. So take about 30 seconds to think about your answer to the next slide. What is one thing you learned about someone in our class today? Five, 4, 3, 2. Maria, can you share one thing you have learned about someone in our class today? All pets. Is that a made-up allergy like my son has? He has made-up allergies when he doesn't like things. Okay, all pets, no pets. Good to know. All right. At the end of each character strong lesson, we do something called a character dare. That basically dares the student to do something related to character. You guys will see your dare here in a second. Before we give the new dare, though, we talk about last week's dare. And the point of this is not to force the kids to do things, but to challenge them to whatever character trait we are working on to then go put it into practice, not the 30 minutes that we talk about it Monday morning, but how do you weave that through your week? So we start with talking about, all right, did anybody do last week's dare? Would you like to share with us how that went? Or would you like to share with us why you chose not to do it? And some people, well, I forgot. It's scary. I didn't want to. I didn't like it, which are all okay answers. We just want to hear the discussion taking place. Okay. And then we give a new dare. For Orchard Middle School, we do a school-wide dare. So we have changed a little bit the character dares to make it more cohesive across the school. And so that it aligns with our student of the month character trait as well. So we're focusing on kindness. So all of our dares are the same school-wide and they focus on kindness so that we can hopefully see lots of kids throughout the school focusing on kindness. Okay, your dare this week, and I picked a dare actually specific for you guys because there is also staff dares, there's family dares, there's admin dares. So your dare is to ask 5 different students this week one thing that they are grateful for about their school and one way that they wish the school would improve. And I went through probably about 100 different dares because I wanted to find a very specific one for you guys. And I want to challenge you guys to do this week. And then if you do it, email me what you find out. Because part of this SEL process is letting students know that they have a voice and that we are going to give them the respect to be able to use their voice. And you find out some really fascinating things from students when they are allowed to use their voice. Right. So that is our Character Strong curriculum. Most lessons take from 45 to 60 minutes, so it is a little bit more in depth. I just took a snapshot of that. That lesson is a 7th grade lesson at the very beginning of the year. So questions that might come up, well, why are you wasting 45 minutes of a school day for kids to learn about types of animals that people like? And at a surface level, yes, you could say that. When you start to dig into the reasoning behind it, we are attempting to build that foundation of connection and belonging so that our students feel like they can open up when other things are going on. So that when dad is going to jail tomorrow for 2 months, or when a friend has shared with them that they're being abused, or when they have had suicidal thoughts for the last 3 months and don't know what to do about it, all 3 of which are conversations I've had with students over the last couple of months. They are willing to come tell an adult about that, and they're willing to ask for help with it, which is why Character Strong and why all this SEL is the foundation of hopefully everything that we do, because without it, our students are falling through the cracks. They can't get to learn algebra and reading if they can't sit through school without thinking about their dad sitting in a jail cell, or their friend who's being abused, or themselves who's being abused. So allowing us to wrap around students is crucial. And it does come with challenges, absolutely. Being comfortable teaching SEL. You hired me to teach math 25 years ago. I don't want to do the touchy-feely stuff. I get it. This is my world. I love it. Let me do touchy-feely stuff all day long. I thrive there, but not everybody does. And so the support of staff who are uncomfortable with it is really important in a challenge we're continuing to face, and we're working through it in different places at different buildings. Character Strong is great because it is very laid out. And you could walk through that lesson without having looked at it and be okay. Would it be amazing and knock your socks off? Probably not, but it still gives the foundation of introducing these concepts and skills to students. Inconsistencies, again, when you have 3 different buildings with different schedules and different students and different staff, you're going to be in different places. But again, a challenge at the district level to continue to work through how do we make that consistent across the board, and how do we support in the areas that's not. And this last one maybe should be first one in bold and in huge. We are always short of resources to fully wrap around our students, because the second we start asking questions about how to support them, then suddenly they start telling us, and then we go, what do we do? How do we support kids with all of these needs? And so that will always, I think, continually be a challenge that I hope we're willing to take on, and one that we need to continue working for solutions for. All 3 middle schools, I clearly had a typo there. So on the left-hand side, we are all committed to doing Character Strong. 2 of the 3 middle schools have a specific class set out during the week that is what it is for. It is for Character Strong. It is for being with a small group of students working on SEL. Student of the month, we all do student of the month that goes back to those Character Strong character traits. 2 of the 3 middle schools have dedicated staff to SEL support. That is part of my job at Orchard Middle School, is that I work on social emotional support for half of my day that I am there. And bolded at the bottom is 2 counselors, because I cannot tell you how many round of applause there was from staff when we said that there was going to be 2 counselors. The counselor that we hired has a vast background in counseling and working with families and troubled youth. And every single day I go, how's it going? He goes, I cannot believe the need that is here. I cannot believe the need that is here. So thank you for approving 2 counselors. Thank you. At Orchard Middle School, because I can speak to that, the zone checks that we went over, a help button, something we created during COVID. There is a button on every student's iPad, and it's a big red button that says help. They can press that button and they can request resources from our counselors. They can request to talk to me as a social emotional support person. They can request to talk to our family advocate that will go into Billy's closet in just a second. And then they can request tech support as well if they're struggling. But it is pretty incredible. I I get notifications every time a kid requests it. And there's many nights at 10:30, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, I get request supports from students who are struggling emotionally with anxiety, with depression, with issues with their friends. And we can start to help intervene and support those students when we get those requests. Billy's Closet is our store that we have started for our students, that there is clothes and there's hygiene items and there's food, and students who need it can come in and get whatever they need whenever they need it. Our tier 2 SEL intervention bank. So just like with behavior, when you start to see kids that are struggling, you ramp up supports for them in behavior. We are working really hard at Orchard to do the same thing for social emotional, because behavior and social emotional can be linked, but sometimes they are very separate, and the interventions needed for those need to be very separate at times. So we're working really hard to build that bank of interventions so we can help best support our students with whatever struggles they're coming up with. And the last thing, we have not put this out yet. This will go home at conferences with our family. And to add an extra layer of support for our students. We have had more families in our building this year than we have had even pre-pandemic. And the ability to be able to connect with them and partner with them and to tell parents, we care about you and we care about your kids. And when there is things going on at home, we want to help partner with that. So this will go home with parents, simply to open that door to let them know you don't need to share what's going on at home. But when there is things going on at home, let us help partner to surround your child. Because it takes a lot. It takes a village. It takes many hands in that village to make sure that our students are, we talk about being future ready. You can't be future ready when you're falling apart, right? So helping to build those skills in all areas. That's what I got.
Can I ask a question? Sorry. So a question I have is, it sounds like you're doing a great job of trying to engage the students and have them becoming opening, discussing their problems and whatnot. What is your protocol for if a student really has needs that kind of exceed what we're comfortable with or capable of dealing with in our school buildings? Because at some point, I assume some of these outreaches are pretty serious.
Absolutely. And that is something, again, with those outside resources that there is not enough out there. So like for me personally, if a student comes to me and says, I'm having these issues, and that is outside like that scope of practice, right? Like I'm not a counselor. I'm not trained as a counselor. I'm not going to pretend I am one. So then I go to our counselors and say this, this child needs to be seen, or this issue is coming up, or they need some support here. And I defer to those professionals within our building. At that point, if it's a student where it's like, hey, this need is really big, a mental health need, that student then contacts the family and we attempt to hook up services and connect families with services here in town. So it's a very case by case, but it's definitely, we do the best we can to reach out to the resources within town, to partner with parents to help get them connected with those resources so that they can get the mental health, if we're referring to that help that they do need, and people that can help them with that on an ongoing basis. Because realistically, schools cannot do that on an ongoing basis. It needs to be some outside support for that.
And to follow up, Amy, that was awesome. To follow up that Orchard is one of our middle schools that for our school-based health centers, they do have behavioral and mental health support. However, CVCH does not have the behavioral practitioners available to put into the schools quite yet, but that is part of what they're working on this year. So very soon, hopefully, when we get those behavioral practitioners in place, they'll be able to actually directly support the student at the building. So we're excited about that. Okay, great, thanks. Mrs. Devereaux.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Devereaux, principal at Westside High School. This is my second year there, carrying on the amazing SEL legacy from that staff and the work of Dr. Callahar. So we have been at the the work of SEL for many, many years. Before Character Strong was in our district, it really, Westside has been doing a lot of this work. And so now we're looking at how are we deepening this work and how are we getting better at it for our students. So we talk a lot about Westside being a trauma-informed or a trauma-informed trained staff, and really kind of what does that mean? So I wanted to just touch on that just a little bit. Our journey began, probably 2012, 13. Corey took a group of teachers down to Walla Walla to Lincoln Alternative High School, which is the school that the Paper Tigers documentary was about. And so that's where the school-based health clinic concept and idea came from, and just really learning a lot about what's going on at Lincoln and how they are working with their students. So that SEL journey and becoming trauma-informed has really come quite a long ways. And so we work and have worked for many years with CRI, which is Community Resilience Initiative out of Walla Walla. And we are continuing that training even this year. So Heidi and I have taken the level 1 trauma course for trainers. So we are now able to train our own staff. We're able to train other staff, other buildings, other departments. I presented just a little bit of this at our admin advance in August, and Jen C from transportation said, I would really love to have you come out in December or January and work with my staff and help them know and understand things from this side as a support for the staff. And then we did, we've had a little bit of turnover in the past few years. So we did a level 1 trauma-informed training for our entire staff and brought someone from CRI in to do that. Heidi and I could have done it, but it was much better being a collective effort where we were all together going through that training. And then we will continue on the trainer course for level 2. And the plan is to train our staff in level 2 strategies. And then by the end of the 23-24 school year, have the entire staff trained in also level 3. So that's kind of going forward, that timeline, what that looks like. So when we talk about trauma informed, we really want to make sure that we understand the brain and what process is constantly going on in our brain, in a child's brain, every decision, every experience. So first and foremost, the brain is looking for safety. Am I safe in this situation? The next thing the brain looks for is some type of connection. Am I safe? But now am I connected to these people around me or to the environment that I'm in? And when the brain gets to a point where they feel safe, and it feels connected, then they're ready to make decisions. They're ready to execute those executive functioning skills and ready to learn. So when we talk about safety, this fight, flight, or freeze. I know you've heard about that. And so when this type of behavior is displayed in that fight, flight, or freeze state, that's what the brain is looking for: safety. They're trying to figure out if they are safe or not. And when not, it can come out in any one of these behaviors. Then the brain looks for that connection. The connection part of it is very sensory. And so I want you to think for just a minute about, do you have a smell or a song that brings back some really good memories for you? Think about that. Some deep-rooted memories, maybe even from childhood, a smell or a song that takes you back to a great place in your life. How about a smell or a song that doesn't bring back good memories? Oh gosh, I smelled this and it just reminded me of, or I heard this song and I just got so all over again. So those little things, a noise, a smell, a picture, all of those types of things can trigger a connection or a loss of connection in a situation. And so when we don't feel connected, the need for connection comes out in some of these behaviors. So this is a model that we like to look at a lot when we start talking about behaviors of our own students, when we get together as a staff and collaborate at Westside. And so I'm gonna give you a little story here. So we know that we're looking for love, trust, and safety. The story is about a dad and a little boy, 2-year-old, let's say, and they're sitting in the church pew. And this is before things are getting going. They're just there together. And the boy's on the dad's lap, and he's kind of letting him fall back into his arms. And he falls back and he catches him and he laughs. And the little boy thinks it's so funny and so fun. And he keeps doing it over and over again. And they're having the best time. Until he hits his head on the pew in front of him. And then what happens? He's in pain. He's doesn't really realize what happened, maybe crying, screaming. Some defensive behavior because of that pain. And what does dad do? Oh, I'm so sorry. It's going to be okay. It's okay. And rubbing his head. And then we see additional, what we call offensive behavior, pushing away, hitting, kicking, more screaming. If you walked into that room right after that little boy hit his head, what would you assume? You probably assume, geez, what is the deal? This little guy's throwing a tantrum. And what we don't always realize is all of the things, all of the events that led up to that reaction or emotion. And that's really what trauma informed, the basis of it is knowing that what the brain's looking for. And when our students have a less than nurturing experience, it could be what happened the night before, it could be what happened this morning getting ready, and they don't feel in control, then we see behaviors. And often in school, that's what we see are the blue and the green behaviors. And we're not always remembering and realizing all of the things that happened beforehand. So Dr. Folletti and Anda in 1998, the ACEs study that I know that you've all heard of and various levels of familiarity with it. Basically, a lot of chronic illness in their patients. And as they started this study, come to find out that many of them, and they could categorize it into 10, had all these experiences that happened in their childhood that caused trauma and was now later in life creating some serious health chronic issues. And so in the picture here, they're the same listed over there. They're kind of hard to read. So I made a list for you. So you can look through that. Those are the 10 original ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. But through more studies, we are finding out that there are a few other acronyms for ACEs, because it's not just about what happened to us in our childhood. It's about what continues to happen all around us every day and how that affects us, not just children, young parents, middle age, senior citizens. So this one here speaks to adverse cultural exposures. This one is adverse circuitry expression. I had a student that has had some ADD in life and was always stared at because of the way that they maybe acted a little bit differently, and people would look at them. And now when someone is looking at them, that's a huge trigger because they think that they're being judged over and over and over again. And what then we see is, why are you staring at me? You know, and that leads to, can lead to some more confrontation in certain situations at school. This one is adverse catastrophic events. And boy, do we know this one. And adverse community environments. So ACEs just aren't about children with high ACE scores and how that affects their behavior. It's also about events in our environment and our culture that are traumatic for people of all ages. So what do we do with this information at Westside? We know that this exists, and we know that our children need a lot of support. They come to Westside for so many different amazing reasons. And we are so glad that they're such a versatile group of students. And so how do we translate that into teaching students about their own brain, and teaching students about how to find those resiliency skills, so that they can keep moving forward, feel safety, feel connected, and be ready for learning every day. So Heidi is going to come up and talk to us about a class that she teaches called Foundations and how we move students through that process.
To go forward is this one. Yeah. Okay. All right. First, I want you guys to take 15 seconds, and I probably won't really time you, just like 15 seconds on the little sticky note that I gave you. If you guys could write down everything you had to do to get here today. For you to, all the things you had to do, like you had to like check the time, you had to make sure that you had lunch on time. I mean, like all the different things that took you. I mean, none of you came here without clothes on, so you had to figure that part out. What are all the things that you guys had to do in order to get here today? Okay, we're going to pretend that was 15 seconds. So hopefully you got a few things on there. So we're going to come back to that in just a second. So one of the things that we do in Foundations is, all the lessons and stuff that we learn, like with Character Strong and Harmony and some of those lessons, and a lot of, we're teaching kids how to interact with each other and all that. So in Foundations, our idea is to go back and make it as concrete as possible, instead of just saying, this is how you should treat each other, this is how you do self-regulation, but understanding the brain, why does it work? And you just get more buy-in. I mean, a lot of times when you have people saying, take 10 deep breaths, and they're like, but I have a big problem, I don't have time to breathe right now. For them to understand the brain and understand, well, why does taking a big breath work? And so they're more apt to follow through and do it at that time. So, so I show this brain scan, and this is there's so much, I'm not a doctor, but there's so much that you can get from this. But some of the key things that try to show the kids to understand is that the brain over here on the left-hand side is from a healthy brain. The other one is an abused brain, and it is from a very abused kid. It's from an orphanage. So this is an exaggerated experience. But for them to be able to like look at it to see that this kid who's being raised in an abusive situation, it's not just they're sad, they're mad. There's actually something physical happening in their brain for things to be harder for them. And so we learn about the different parts of the brain. And if you notice, one of the biggest things is that top part, which is the front part of your brain. It is not as active. And so if you think about what happens in each part of the brain, you can realize that that kid is going to function every day, and their every day to do how they get to a meeting is going to be different. So these are executive functioning skills. The front part of your brain holds your executive functioning skills. So now I want you to go back to your sticky note and think about whether or not you needed any executive functioning skills to get here today. Did you need impulse control? Oh man, I need a coffee on my way. Oh no, it's this time. Do I really stop? I'm just looking at Jen. Well, it's Corey's fault too, because he has good coffee. Organization, task initiation, planning and prioritizing, self-monitoring, working memory, flexible thinking, and emotional control. Did you need any of those to be able just to get to a meeting? Then you think about sitting in a classroom and you've got kids over here that are saying this, you've got something fun happening over there. I've got work in front of me that's too hard. I got mom and dad fighting at home. I have all these different things happening. And not only is that hard for everybody, but now you're talking about a kid who's that part of their brain isn't as active because of all the things they went through when they were younger. Because when you go through, how do I go backwards? When you go through the stress response, when you guys are stressed, you know, you feel it, that part of your brain shuts off. You're not thinking as clear. Well, just like if I always worked out my right arm and never my left arm, my right arm gets really strong. My left arm gets weak. I'm always working out the stress. I'm never working out the front part. That part is just not as active. It doesn't get developed. So that's where when we talk about all the different ACEs is super important. When we talk about when it's happening, when a brain is developing, it's huge. So when we first start talking about this, the kids, I try really hard to let them see, the cool thing is this is concrete. What you're feeling is real, but you're not stuck with it. And then the whole rest of the class is what do you do about it? How can we change it? So we use this, and the cute little minions have a purpose and a lesson. So I'm just going to leave them up there. It's just a activity we do with it that makes sense. But we go through each part. There is way more involved in a brain and the stress response. These are the ones we talk about because they go back to the lessons that we talk about. First one I point out is the amygdala. The amygdala is like the alarm system of your brain. It's triggered by your thoughts and senses. When kids understand that, when all of a sudden they're feeling that stress response and being able to understand, I just had a thought or a sense that triggered it. It's just a very concrete thing that happened. It's not bigger than me. I just need to see what it is. And then I can take that back. Then we start learning skills, because you can hijack that stress response back because I know my amygdala is triggered by thoughts and senses. I can use that to my advantage and trigger it back. So I always tell them their amygdala is like Doug, the dog on Up, squirrel. Give it another thought or sense, and you can make it so now whatever was triggering that stress response, now you can make it go the other way. So we learn mindfulness. So if you think about the different mindfulness, like taking a deep breath, thinking about what it feels like you pull in, those are thoughts and senses. Your sympathetic nervous system also is how your body responds. The only part you have control over is breathing. So if you have breathing, thoughts or senses, you can totally hijack that system back. And now you can get access to the smart part of your brain back again. We also talk about within 8 weeks of intentional practicing of mindfulness, you can actually shrink your amygdala. So then it's kind of like having an alarm, you know, like if you had a fire alarm in your house and you blew out a candle and it would go off, that would be pretty annoying. If you have an overactive amygdala, it's going to be triggered by little things. And we all know those kids that are in our, like, this one kid looked at me funny and now my world is going to explode. Their amygdala is triggered way too sensitively. So just by doing mindfulness regularly for 8 weeks, you can shrink the size of your amygdala. It's a normal size alarm. We don't want to get rid of it. We need it, but we can shrink it. And then we talk about building neural pathways, so faster access. As soon as they can get it so that their amygdala is hijacked back, they can have access to the smart part of their brain faster. We talk about the hippocampus is the memory part of your brain. And that's where your brain, like where Jen was talking about up here, your brain is always searching to be safe. It is constantly on guard, and it's going to grab something from your memory, the first thing that it grabs, whether it's helpful or not. So our job in class is to try to figure out how do we fill that with as many helpful things as possible. So when it goes and scans it, the chances of it grabbing something that's helpful is higher. So some of the things we do in class, we acknowledge successes and not just tell them like, oh my gosh, that was a really hard test. And look how you studied and how it came out, or you failed that test and you went and talked to the teacher and look how that turned out. It's, even though those are good things, we teach them the reason that works is because now it's stored in your hippocampus. The next time you have a hard test, your brain's, the chances are you're going to grab it. Intentional gratitude releases dopamine and serotonin. We tell them how that works in the brain. Feelings are just information. This is huge for kids to understand that feelings aren't bigger than them. It's just information. It's like the warning light on your car, that I want a red light to come on my car if something red is happening in my engine. And if that red thing is happening in my engine and I don't see a light, I'm going to have a big problem. So if I have an uncomfortable emotion, like when we talk about your zones of regulation, if you have a red feeling, I want to know that feeling because I want the information from it. I don't want to hide that. And we always talk about there's no good or bad feelings. It's only comfortable and uncomfortable. Because if it's bad, it gives the impression that you're not supposed to feel it. I want to feel angry if I have an angry feeling because I need the information from that. Okay, I'll go faster. And then the executive or the prefrontal cortex, that's what's shut off during our stress response. And we want to have access back to that. And so that's where we go back to your guys' sticky notes. If we can have you have better access to any of those things that you need, then you're going to function better in class. And so I'm going to show you a couple things that we do to make this so it's included in. Can I have you hand these out? There's 3 of these. They're all just generic. We want to pull this back into the classrooms. And so that what we're learning in our foundations class is spread everywhere. So the kids walk out with a couple different things. The first little thing is a booklet. When we talk about how to hijack our stress response back with our amygdala, they make these little books and they keep them with them. They show them to their teachers. They keep them with them. Those are real ones. I just changed the names. The little hard card, those are just kind of summaries. Favorite way to distract your amygdala, go-to resiliency skill, all those types of things. Then they make these boxes. I didn't bring any of these just because they haven't made them yet this quarter, but they have these, which looks like random items, but they go through and they have them each mean something to them. And then they're supposed to keep them in their sock drawer and have them forever. So when they're 40 and get laid off from their job, they can pull out their paper clip and remember, oh, I learned that skill. So it's just ways to just keep it more concrete and something that they take with them forever. I always end the class with them I ask them a question of what's something you learned from foundations that will change, that will have the biggest impact on the future you. And I always get things back of, I didn't know I had control over this. I didn't know I could do this. When I'm with my family, I tell them this. And it's so they get a lot from it and it spreads beyond the classroom. So I'll let you go.
Awesome, Heidi. Thank you. So how does this play into our school climate and culture at Westside? One of the things that we have done this year is we have created what we call the perch. We are the Westside Eagles. So the perch is a room at Westside for students to go. That's calm, safe space where they can go and try to re-regulate themselves. We work on skill building, resiliency skills, academics, you name it. Graham Stansberry is a full-time, what we call student success coach for us. And that is his focus in the perch. On the left-hand side here are our school-wide expectations, much like make good decisions, be kind. Ours are called the 3 C's: courage, compassion, and commitment. And we've had the 3 C's for a long time, and we've had a little definition of them, but this year we are digging a little bit deeper and we are adding, what does that look like in practice in a real situation? In not just what does courage look like in the parking lot, but really putting some behaviors to them that will get the outcomes that we are looking for. We call this the Westside Way. And Graham also teaches a 9-week class when students come in. It's 1 hour a week for new students, 9 weeks where we really dig into the Westside Way and the concept of fresh start at Westside. You've come to us for a reason. Now let's look at our past and our behaviors and how we can move those forward. So as we talk about SEL, this is the foundation of everything for us that we do at Westside. It's embedded in everything that we do. And one of the things that we always remember and the lens that we use is every behavior is communication. And there's a need that is not being met. So we want to make sure that we can get those needs met to get them to the front smart part of their brain. And we really believe that our foundational practices can can really help to curb some of those offensive and defensive behaviors, the green and the blue that we saw earlier, because we've been meeting their needs for a long time. Now, does it always work? Definitely not. There are always times when we need to dig a little bit deeper. But the nice thing is that if there is a blow up with a student, we're not going, whoa, where did that come from? Because we've been seeing along the way. This really quick, we took all the SEL standards. I removed the benchmarks and we've started intentionally putting in there things that we specifically do at Westside that speak to all of those standards. Some have more than others. Some are areas for growth. And we always root that back to that promise statement. And we want to make sure that Westside kids know that they're seen, that they can thrive, that they belong, and that they are ready. And that's it.
Perfect timing. And as you can all see, so first of all, let's give our experts in the room a round of applause. Oh my gosh. It's so much expertise in the room when it comes to SEL and the work that we are doing here in the district. As you can see, social emotional learning is quite complex. And hopefully from today, you've seen the different layers and the different levels in which we address SEL. And you have found and experienced that SEL is good for our little people and our big people. Because as I watched the activities happening, I saw connections, I saw laughter, I saw smiling, I saw sharing, and I saw learning. So it was really cool for us to just see that based on today. So it's good for the big people as it is for the little people as well. So I told Bill it was a 90-minute presentation. We do want to give you some time for questions. So if you have time, we can address some questions. If you don't, you can send your questions to me and I'll give them to the team and then we can move forward from there. So want to thank everybody again. Excellent.
I've been here as a sponge, no questions.
You spoke to Westside specifically, excuse me. How are these things being incorporated in the regular high school or the Wenatchee High School? I kind of, as I was taking notes, I'm elementary, middle school, and then high school, Westside. What are we doing? Just general Wenatchee High School.
I can address that. So like, well, no, I mean, like, I don't know if Jennifer or Heidi actually know. So that would be something that I would address, and I would love to have another chance when we come back with SEL and have Wenatchee High School bring what it is they're doing, because they're doing a lot. They also have the Character Strong curriculum that they use. They've trained all of their teachers over a couple of subsequent years during the pandemic. And then each of their teachers delivers a Character Strong lesson at least one time during the week. Sometimes that's on Monday because it's a little different day. It's a little bit shorter day. And then they're asked to embed a variety of the strategies that you saw today, including the SEL strategies of the optimistic closure and the inclusive introduction and the engaging strategies, that those are embedded in their classes each and every day. So yeah, those are some of the things. And there's probably more. I have not checked in with Wenatchee High School this year to see what they're working on this year with regard to SEL. But you will all see that at the end of the month when they turn in their school improvement plan, because the SEL will be addressed in their school improvement plan, along with PLCs, English, and math as well. So you get to see that. Yeah, excellent. All right.
I'm going to ask each of you to speak to this, if you don't mind. When Corey talked about the teacher that meant the most to him, and that he, spoke about Mr. Merrill early on, and I kind of think of SEL, or had thought of SEL as it used to be what Mr. Merrill did automatically. Good teaching. It wasn't something that was set aside or, okay, we've got a SEL. This is how you are a good teacher. This is how you engage your students. This is how you check on them, make sure they're okay, that kind of thing. would you each speak to, or kind of describe to me how you see that? And in terms of what I'm talking about is, you know, it used to not be a thing. And the reason people have, I think, have questioned, why do we have to introduce this now too? You know, when we should be focusing on teaching and learning. And I asked that, I've learned a lot about it and learned, you know, how important it is, and hearing what you guys have talked about today is reaffirms that. But would you speak to that for me?
Here, and I can pass the microphone as well. I think one of the important things to consider is exactly what you said, good teaching, right? And some people have a proclivity to be able to address SEL and what they do, but we also have to have our students learn it. So just having the Doug Merrills of the world, our students don't actually learn the behaviors and what the actual content and curriculum of SEL is. So that's an additional piece, but I'll let the practitioners and the experts answer too.
Just real quick on that, would you say that that's because it's not something that kids are learning at home from their families initially? They're not getting those skills, or because of the ACEs, because of that kind of thing? Is that why we've moved in that direction of needing to step in?
I think the reason why I jumped in to say I could answer this is because I'm old. And so I remember what it was like a long time ago of what was okay and not okay for us to put into our classes. And like, you know, there was that part of, you know, nope, that's the family's job to teach this. I think one of the biggest differences is that we know a lot more now. There's like, I always think that as soon as you know something, it highlights more things that you don't know, because now you can ask smarter questions. And so I think that as we've learned about ACEs, all of a sudden that brought up the, oh, wow, look what happened this now. Well, what about this? And so as a society, we know a lot more now, and we can't ignore it. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why it's changed over time, because like what Doug Merrill was doing was natural and obviously was good and made great impact because it created Corey, and we love that. And so, but Corey was on the receiving end of it, not on the like, oh, this is why. And so the chances of it continuing isn't as good. But then when you do have those issues where, you know, now that we understand, like, for example, the stuff that I teach in foundations of, now that we understand that those executive functioning skills are not, then we need to intentionally teach those things. We can't just assume that those are going to be learned along the way with our normal, how we treat everybody along the way. We need to be intentional about it now that we know. We didn't know before. So that's great.
I 100% agree with what they both have said. And so I teach a 7th and 8th grade elective this year, and I have these 2 boys in my 8th grade class, and they bicker constantly just about nothingness. And the purpose of my class is it's very character trait driven. And finally the other day I was so annoyed, and I said, just don't look at each other. Don't speak at each other. Do not cross the center line of the room. Stay away from each other. And the kid looked at me and goes, I thought we were supposed to be a community in here. So that being said, like, I love this world. Like, I live and breathe it, and I still don't practice those all the time. I see it as I'm raising my own kids, because they're skills that really have to be taught and practiced very intentionally. And I'm currently, like I said, my current class is based on some research she was a former educator, and then she turned into a researcher from kids, not only from struggling environments that come from ACEs, but kids who also are from very affluent families and neighborhoods and the best of the best schools, who also failed when they became adults and couldn't function because they were lacking some foundational skills of what does it look like to persevere? What does it look like to have a growth mindset? What does it look like to be empathetic toward other people? And because those skills were not built in them, regardless of the background they came from, they became an adult and their relationships failed, and they couldn't keep jobs, and they were unhappy, and they were depressed. And so it's not just skills that kids who come from struggling homes need, it's across the board. And then that goes back to, as we know more, we do more, but also, I mean, I didn't grow up having people teach me this stuff. So it's become, because I'm fascinated with it, that I study the brain and I study what it does. But if I didn't do that, I would not be teaching it to my 5 and 6-year-old at home. And even when I do know it, I still struggle to teach it to my 5 and 6-year-old at home sometimes. So it's just that it's a foundational skill that all kids need. And I think that it's a hard skill to teach. And so it needs to be done in schools and throughout their times because it needs to be repetitive.
Before you answer, then how do you translate that to the community to say, your kids need this just as much as they need science and math and reading? How do you translate that to this particular class? I mean, sometimes they call it leadership, or there was something that, you know, what would be another name? I mean, I'm thinking of like home ec. Sure, that was
Yeah.
something that, you know, something so different from the basics. How do we translate that to the community to say, hey, this is not necessarily what you're thinking it is a life skills class or something along those lines?
I think having those conversations and making parents aware is really the only way to do it. Because if you're never having this conversation, I totally understand where that comes from. Hey, my kid can't read. Please take them out of a class where you're learning to be touchy-feely and talk about your emotions and get my kid to read. I get that. So I think it's the deeper understanding and having these conversations, having just expanding community knowledge of why we're doing it, and being able to share that with parents is important to expand that knowledge.
I have two quick things to add to that. One, you don't have access to the smart part of your brain unless you have this part taken care of. And so if we want to teach science and stuff like that, they need to have access to the smart part of their brain. And then the other thing I think is important for them to understand is that any lifelong issues that you have, I don't know how many people get fired or divorced or have split families and things like that because they don't know how to do math. They do because they don't know how to get along and they don't know how to self-regulate. They don't know how, these things are impactful forever in every angle of your life. So we can, all those like academic skills, we have better access to them, but we also have those skills to be successful in life itself.
And I would follow up by saying it absolutely is a community conversation. And it's one that it's as important as our community conversations that we have. I think about the PAC meeting and when we talk about gangs and we talked about violence, we talked about English language arts and how to develop good readers. We need to talk to our community about resilience. How do we deal with our environmental factors? How do we deal with our interpersonal factors? And how do we deal with one another? And I see that as the next layer of conversations that we need to have in this community as well. Again, going back to Walla Walla and the CRI, the Community Resilience Initiative, that's what they're all about. How does this community work together for each other to learn and grow? Very powerful. It's awesome. Thank you.
I wasn't going to say, go, Laura, you. I wasn't. Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to say this, but I think I come from a completely different cultural and educational background. And so I grew up in closed communities at schools, 24 hours a day, all together. But in that closed community, the kinds of things that are taught in SEL were ingrained into the culture. And I'll give a silly little example. We just got 2 grades. One was for effort, one was for achievement. And the status depended as much on your effort as your achievement. And you have, that's kind of one silly little example. But as I listen to it, what I notice that you're creating the ability for students to have the maturity to manage themselves. And in a closed community, a lot of the time we were student managed and we were allowed to do things that you wouldn't be allowed to do in an open community with kids coming in and out. So that created that behavior, but in a different way. You had a sense that you were responsible for learning, not the teacher for teaching. That also is part of how you develop it. You recognize your brain. So what I'm hearing today, I'm not representative, I come from a different world, but the endpoints, the structures that direct you to those endpoints are what you need, where you have open perimeters and the whole outside world is swirling around in your schools.